Hello, knowledge seekers. In this episode of 20-Minute Books, we're diving into Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant. This seminal work, first published in 1781, stands as a cornerstone of Western philosophy and continues to influence our understanding of knowledge and reality. Kant explores the capabilities and boundaries of human reason, proposing that while we can comprehend and articulate the nature of our experiences, the essence of reality itself remains beyond our cognitive reach. Immanuel Kant, a pivotal figure of the Enlightenment era, left an indelible mark on philosophy with his insights and theories. His contributions, particularly through his trilogy of critiques, helped shape the movement known as German idealism. This book is particularly suited for skeptics who challenge the extents of knowledge, philosophy students seeking to grasp foundational texts, and individuals interested in the interplay between science and religion. Join us as we unpack the dense arguments and revolutionary ideas presented in Kant's Critique of Pure Reason and consider its profound implications on both past and contemporary thought. Critique of Pure Reason, a groundbreaking and influential philosophy, classic about the limits of human reason. Introduction. Exploring the deepest questions of existence. What truly shapes our perceptions of space and time? How can we understand the interconnectedness of cause and effect that seems to govern the universe? Prepare to dive into some of Western philosophy's most profound queries as we explore Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Renowned for its pioneering thoughts and perspectives that stretch the boundaries of human understanding, this work promises both a challenging and enlightening experience. Spanning an extensive 856 pages filled with dense and complex writing, Kant himself admitted the text was dry, obscure, opposed to all ordinary notions, and moreover, long-winded. Even the most dedicated Kant scholars find themselves at crossroads over various interpretations of his intricate constructs. Our journey through this philosophical giant's work will simplify some of Kant's central ideas, omitting many of the more esoteric details relevant primarily to academic circles. For the curious-minded and philosophical enthusiasts alike, the essence of Kant's theories offers substantial intellectual nourishment. Throughout this narrative, you'll uncover the unexpected dimensions of space and time, the startling realities of causality, and the critical insights on the boundaries of human reasoning. Prepare to have your mind stretched and your views on reality fundamentally challenged as we unpack the enigmatic insights of one of philosophy's most formidable figures. Part 1. Laying the groundwork for philosophical endeavors. Imagine you are an architect in the Middle Ages, tasked by the king to construct a towering edifice that aspires to touch the heavens. Faced with a vast array of materials, your first step would naturally be to scrutinize their properties. What are the strengths and limitations of these stones, beams, and mortars? Only through understanding the fundamentals of these materials can you feasibly set foundations for a structure intended to pierce the skies. This scenario mirrors the role of a philosopher setting out to devise a system of metaphysics. The critical lesson here is, in philosophy, as in construction, assessing the raw materials at your disposal is paramount before embarking on grand designs. Metaphysics, a profound branch of philosophy, seeks to escalate our comprehension of reality into the sublime domains of inquiry. It harnesses the powers of abstract concepts and reason, attempting to transcend empirical findings of natural sciences to touch the very essence of existence itself. Intriguing questions about the nature of time, whether it has a commencement or stretches into an infinite regress, are quintessentially metaphysical inquiries. Building a coherent metaphysical system involves answering these profound questions and weaving the responses into an integrated framework. Prior to Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, Many philosophers attempted to erect their metaphysical structures without thoroughly investigating the nature and origin of the conceptual materials at their disposal. They took existing ideas and logical frameworks as given and proceeded to build. However, Kant challenges us to consider, are these intellectual resources truly adequate for the task at hand? To what extent can they support the lofty ambitions of metaphysical inquiry? If they can sustain a towering construction that reaches up to the divine, by all means proceed. But if they fall short, we might need to temper our intellectual ambitions, perhaps restricting them to the realms of scientific inquiry or the spiritual dimensions handled by religion. Understanding the capacities and origins of our intellectual tools beforehand guards against the peril of our philosophical towers collapsing under their own weight. This foundational query sets the stage for a sound philosophical exploration, ensuring that our intellectual constructions are as robust as they are soaring. Part 2. Steering clear of dogmatic pitfalls through critical inquiry. Imagine, for a moment, we are engaged in the precarious endeavor of constructing an abstract metaphysical tower. Despite the lack of tangible risks, after all, this tower is built from ideas, not stones. The potential collapse of our conceptual edifice can bring about significant intellectual consequences. This is not merely about avoiding physical harm, but about preventing a lapse into metaphysical dogmatism. The crucial insight to embrace is, philosophers must navigate away from dogmatism by undertaking a thorough critique of pure reason. Philosophy fundamentally involves subjecting our beliefs to rigorous examination. Consider, for example, the belief in free will. A philosopher would probe, why believe in free will? Perhaps it stems from the notion that moral accountability requires free will. But then, why should moral responsibility hinge on free will? Each question peels back a layer, urging us toward deeper reflection and grounding our beliefs in firmer, more critically examined convictions. In stark contrast stands the approach of dogmatism, the antithesis of true philosophical inquiry. It involves asserting beliefs without challenging their underlying assumptions. If we leap into constructing a metaphysical system without first scrutinizing the foundational mental materials from which our ideas are constructed, we're presupposing their adequacy for such high-stakes intellectual architecture. Such an assumption might be unfounded, making our philosophical pursuits precariously dogmatic. To eschew this dogmatism, a critical examination of our capability for engaging in metaphysical thought is essential. Does our capacity for this type of inquiry stem from our sensory experiences of the world, or does it arise from a deeper, perhaps innate, faculty to reason? Since sensory input only equips us with knowledge of the empirical world, any metaphysical understanding must originate from our capacity for reason, what Kant refers to as pure reason. Thus, philosophers find themselves facing the imperative to perform a critique of pure reason. This involves a meticulous scrutiny of reason itself, questioning its scope, its origins, and its limitations in providing us with metaphysical insights. Only through such critical inquiry can philosophers hope to construct robust systems of thought that stand firm against the winds of dogmatism and skepticism, thereby safeguarding the integrity of their philosophical endeavors. Part 3. How dogmatism breeds skepticism, challenging the foundation of all knowledge. Being labeled dogmatic is something no philosopher wants. Yet, while this label might not bother the layperson, after all, metaphysical speculations seem far removed from everyday life. The problem isn't just metaphysical airiness. The true danger lies in how dogmatism fuels skepticism, a more pervasive threat not just to philosophy, but to all domains of human knowledge. The vital point here: dogmatism in philosophy inadvertently fosters skepticism, undermining trust in our capacity to know anything definitive about the world. Metaphysics, by its nature, is uniquely vulnerable to skepticism. This branch of philosophy doesn't progress visibly like other sciences. While empirical sciences like biology or physics demonstrate palpable advancements from antiquity to the present day, philosophy often appears caught in the same centuries-old debates initiated by the likes of Plato and Aristotle. Looking back, it becomes apparent why these age-old disputes prevail. The absence of a thorough critique of pure reason has allowed philosophers to propound any theory, however speculative, without stringent foundational scrutiny. This condition has bred a landscape where contradictory assertions flourish unchecked. For instance, the existential debate about a divine creator versus the self-origination of the universe continues to be a battleground of opposing philosophical arguments. Such perpetually unresolved conflicts in foundational questions naturally incline one towards skepticism. It becomes too easy to think perhaps nothing definitive can be discerned about metaphysical matters after all. Considering metaphysics operates primarily within the realm of pure reason, setting aside mathematics for the moment, we recognize that most other knowledge relies on empirical evidence through sensory perception. If the supreme domain of pure reason fails to resolve basic metaphysical issues, what efficacy does it truly hold? This doubt in pure reason's ability casts a longer shadow, potentially discrediting even our more immediate sensory experiences. If our highest cognitive faculties falter in grasping the essence of reality, can we truly rely on our lesser faculties to navigate the complexities of the empirical world? This spirals into a deeper questioning of our sensory perceptions. Perhaps, one might conclude, they are not entirely reliable, leaving us skeptical about everything we perceive. Thus, the chain reaction initiated by dogmatism can lead to a profound skepticism where everything is doubted, leaving us in a state of philosophical paralysis where we might conclude, perhaps we truly know nothing at all. Part 4. The intricate tie between metaphysical concepts, skepticism, science, and religion. In today's world, where terms like fake news and alternative facts dominate discussions, the shadow of skepticism looms large, echoing a challenge faced during Kant's era in 18th century Europe. Back then, the burgeoning field of science brought skepticism towards metaphysical and religious beliefs into the mainstream, but this skepticism threatened to undermine the very foundations of science itself. The crux of the matter is this: both religion and science hinge on metaphysical concepts, rendering them vulnerable to the disturbances caused by skepticism. Starting with religion, its doctrines are deeply interwoven with metaphysical premises. Concepts such as God or the soul are believed to exist in a transcendent, non-material domain, a realm definitively beyond physical observation. No scientific instrument can detect these spiritual entities, placing them squarely outside the empirical sphere. If our rational faculties are also incapable of grasping these metaphysical elements, then the entire framework of religious belief stands on precarious ground, lacking rational underpinning. When we turn to science, a similar dependency on metaphysical constructs emerges, particularly evident in the fundamental law of causality. This principle, essential to scientific inquiry, asserts that every occurrence is precipitated by a preceding event, a cause leading to an effect. This systematic linkage underpins all of scientific exploration, dictating the pursuit of understanding the causal mechanisms governing natural phenomena, from gravity to the conservation of matter. Yet, the very concept of causality is a metaphysical construct, an abstract idea that eludes direct observation, yet is assumed to be a universal structuring principle of reality. The skepticism surrounding this idea was notably influenced by the skepticism of David Hume, a Scottish philosopher whose thoughts prelude Kant's. Hume posited that empirical observation only allows us to witness sequential occurrences. For instance, heating water leads it to boil. Frequent observation of these sequences prompts us to anticipate future occurrences, thus forming a pattern. However, to infer from this pattern a binding universal law that something must unfailingly follow another, is to step beyond empirical evidence into the arena of metaphysical assumption. This insight challenges the foundational assumption of causality and, by extension, the entire scientific endeavor that builds upon it. If the sensory evidence alone does not justify our belief in causality, then the scientific study based on such a premise might itself rest on shaky metaphysical grounds. Thus, skepticism not only threatens the realm of the metaphysical and religious, but also casts doubt on the empirical certainty provided by science itself. Part 5. The predicament of a priori knowledge in securing mathematical certainty. In the complex web of metaphysical concepts underlying beliefs in both science and religion, we encounter an even broader challenge affecting the realm of mathematics. This revolves around the concept of a priori knowledge, which is essential for the foundation of mathematical certainty. The fundamental issue at hand: if our reason fails to provide us with a priori knowledge, then our entire understanding of mathematics is at risk. To break it down, a priori knowledge signifies truths known independently of any specific experiences. Consider the mathematical expression 7 plus 5 equals 12. This equation exemplifies a priori knowledge because its truth doesn't hinge on real-world experimentation or observation. Rather, it's understood inherently. This mathematical truth asserts that the sum of 7 and 5 will inevitably result in 12, irrespective of the objects being counted, be they mundane objects on Earth, fantastical creatures, or celestial beings on another planet. It proclaims a universal and necessary truth, unbounded by time, space, or circumstances. However, as explored earlier with the concept of causality, empirical experiences only show us recurring sequences, not necessity. They reveal patterns, not definite laws. From this standpoint, we can infer that truths recognized as necessary and universal cannot be derived purely from experiential knowledge. Consequently, they must stem from a priori reasoning. This brings us to a pivotal junction. If these truths do not emerge from experiential knowledge, then they must either originate from our faculty of reason, ensuring their validity, or they must be mere constructs of our imagination, devoid of actual knowledge. The question then becomes, how does reason arrive at such truths? This inquiry challenges us to scrutinize the capacity of reason itself. If reason can justify the a priori knowledge upon which mathematics rests, then math retains its status as a secure and undeniable truth. If not, the very foundation of mathematics, long considered an absolute and precise science, becomes suspect. Thus, investigating the capabilities and limits of pure reason not only impacts our metaphysical and scientific understanding, but also determines the reliability of mathematical knowledge, one of the most fundamental and ostensibly solid realms of human cognition. Part 6. Decoding the origins of a priori knowledge within the mind's framework. As we delve deeper into the intricacies of metaphysical understanding and mathematical reasoning, a pivotal question emerges. Can we possess knowledge independently of our empirical experiences? This brings us to the concept of a priori knowledge, which, contrary to common misconceptions, isn't about being innately born with specific information. The crucial distinction to grasp: a priori knowledge isn't innate. Rather, it's derived from the mind's innate capacity to process and structure experiences. Returning to our arithmetic example, 7 plus 5 equals 12, it's clear that we weren't born knowing this equation. We learned it, typically in an educational setting, a definite experiential context. Thus, while our knowledge acquisition followed an experience chronologically, it doesn't necessarily mean the knowledge itself stems causally from that experience. Consider the dynamics of how we gain consciousness and knowledge. On one end, we have sensory inputs, the raw data we receive through our sense organs, such as sights and sounds. On the other end, there are the mind's internal mechanisms, its unique processes of organizing, interpreting, and understanding that sensory data, which give rise to perceptions, concepts, and judgments. In exploring whether knowledge is a priori, we are essentially questioning the origin of this knowledge. Does it emanate from external sensory data, from the mind's internal processes, or a combination of both? If we determine that certain knowledge arises solely from the mind's internal mechanisms without dependence on sensory input, then we identify it as a priori. It represents the mind's inherent contribution to the fabric of consciousness, not directly caused or dependent on external experiences, but instead shaped by the mind's intrinsic capabilities. Understanding a priori knowledge in this light clarifies that while it is acquired through interaction with the world, its roots are not in the external stimuli, but in the cognitive frameworks we inherently possess. This subtle yet profound realization shifts our perspective on how knowledge, particularly of the abstract and universal variety, like mathematics, is fundamentally secured and validated within the cognitive architecture of the human mind. Part 7. Unpacking the mind's complex machinery: sensibility, understanding, and reason. As we delve deeper into the realm of a priori knowledge, it becomes necessary to dissect the curious workings of the human mind, our ultimate tool in gathering and processing information. Imagine the mind as a sophisticated factory where raw data is transformed into comprehensive knowledge. But how exactly does this factory operate? To better understand, let's break down the mind's complex machinery into its three fundamental faculties: sensibility, understanding, and reason. Here's the core message. The mind is structured into three primary faculties: sensibility, understanding, and reason, each playing a critical role in how we perceive and interpret the world. Firstly, sensibility is our ability to perceive sensory inputs. This faculty is our initial point of contact with the world, where we receive raw data through sensations like sight, sound, and touch. For instance, when you observe a house, you don't directly perceive a house as a complex concept. Rather, you initially sense the various colors and shapes that form your visual experience of the house. These are the building blocks provided by sensibility. However, these isolated sensations of colors and shapes don't inherently carry meaning until they are processed further. This is where our second faculty, understanding, steps in. Understanding allows us to organize and categorize these sensory inputs into coherent concepts. We recognize patterns, label objects, and begin to construct relationships between them. From your repeated encounters with canine behavior and expressions of happiness, you abstract concepts like dogs and happiness. Combining these concepts allows you to form judgments, such as, if a dog is wagging its tail, it is happy. This judgment encapsulates a conditional or if-then relationship between the two concepts. The third faculty, reason, is where more complex thought processes occur, integrating multiple judgments to form reasoned conclusions or arguments. Reason deals with the chaining together of these judgments into a logical sequence, what's known traditionally as a syllogism. Using our previous example, if a dog is wagging its tail, it is happy, premise 1. This dog is wagging its tail, premise 2. Therefore, this dog is happy, conclusion. Here, reason helps us derive a specific conclusion from general premises, facilitating complex reasoning and decision-making. Understanding these three faculties as distinct but interconnected parts of the mind's machinery provides a clearer picture of how we process and refine our perceptions into sophisticated knowledge structures. This exploration into the mind's faculties sets the stage for a more profound understanding of how we may obtain a priori knowledge and thus equips us for deeper intellectual endeavors. Part 8. How the mind structures the chaos of sense data. Diving into the realm of perception, it's crucial to acknowledge that the mind is far from a passive observer, simply cataloging the world as it passes by. Rather, it acts as an active participant, molding the raw, chaotic sensory data into organized, comprehensible information. This leads us to an essential insight about cognitive processing. The fundamental principle at play is to transform sense data into usable information. The mind employs predefined structural methods. Without these inherent organizational schemes, our sensory experiences would be nothing more than a bewildering array of colors, shapes, and sounds, lacking coherence and meaning. But, as our experiences show, we perceive a structured and orderly world. This organization isn't accidental, but is a product of the mind's inherent capacity to impose order on sensory stimuli. Consider the example of viewing a house. As you gaze upon it, you don't perceive a random collection of colors and shapes. Rather, you recognize distinct elements like the roof, windows, and mailbox, each occupying specific spatial relations to one another. The roof sits atop the walls, windows fit within the walls, and the mailbox stands beside the entrance. This arrangement isn't simply a registration of visual data, but an imposition of spatial understanding that organizes these elements in relation to each other. This ability to perceive objects in space, with defined relationships like above, below, or beside, presupposes the existence of a spatial framework within which these objects can be arranged. Thus, before you even see the house, your mind must already possess a concept of space, a fundamental structure within which all physical objects are positioned. This spatial understanding is a prime example of how the mind applies ready-made frameworks to order the sensory chaos. These frameworks aren't learned anew each time we perceive something. They are part of the very architecture of the mind, enabling us to make sense of our environment efficiently and effectively. By recognizing that spatial perception isn't merely about registering what is seen, but involves actively organizing it according to the mind's inherent spatial framework, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complex interplay between our sensory experiences and cognitive processes. This understanding underscores the mind's role not only as a receiver of information, but also as a creator of the coherent world we navigate daily. Part 9. Understanding time and space as fundamental templates for perception. In our continuous quest to understand how the mind interprets and organizes sensory data, we must appreciate the foundational roles played by time and space. These are not just elements of our physical reality, but are integral to the very mechanism through which our mind structures all sensory input. The essential insight here is, time and space are the pure forms of sensibility, essential frameworks that the mind utilizes to organize sensory data. Imagine attempting to process visual information without a concept of space. A blue patch observed would just be that, a singular sensory input without relation to anything else. There would be no next to or above, as these spatial relations are what allow multiple sensations to coexist in a coherent visual field. Space, therefore, acts as a necessary template, a pre-existing condition of the mind that organizes sensory data into a spatially coherent experience. But space isn't the only scaffold of sensibility. Time is equally crucial. To understand its role, consider again the house you are observing. The roof and the door aren't just seen in a spatial relationship, one being above the other. They are also perceived in a temporal order. You may see the door first and then the roof, or you might perceive them simultaneously. This ability to perceive events as occurring either sequentially or simultaneously points to time as a fundamental framework organizing your sensory experiences. These temporal relationships, simultaneity and sequence, are vital for structuring the entire panorama of our experiences. Without the underlying continuum of time, our sensory experiences would turn chaotic, marked by impossible occurrences like reverse aging or objects existing in multiple places at once. Thus, just as space provides the scaffolding for placing objects relative to one another, time arranges our experiences along a continuous line, allowing us to comprehend movements, changes, and durations. It underpins every experience, from the simplest to the most complex. Each moment we live and each observation we make is governed by this temporal framework. In essence, space and time are not merely dimensions in which physical events occur, they are intrinsic to the mind's capability to make sense of the world. Predating all experience, they are the pure forms of sensibility that structure every bit of sensory data we encounter. Everything we perceive, interpret, and understand does so within the boundless realms of time and space, making them not only prerequisites for experience, but also the very fabric that makes perception possible. Part 10. Unveiling the cognitive templates for thought and logic. Exploring further into the intricate architecture of the mind, beyond the perceptual realms of space and time, we encounter the faculties of understanding and reason. These faculties are crucial for advancing beyond mere sensory awareness and entering into the realm of conceptual thought and logical inference. The cornerstone idea here is the mind possesses inherent templates not only for perceiving, but also for understanding and reasoning about the world around us. Delving into the faculty of understanding, let's consider a simple judgment. If something is left in the sunlight, it will eventually get warm. At a fundamental level, the structure of this judgment can be abstracted to a formula. If X, then Y. This formula represents a universal logical pattern that applies regardless of the specifics involved, whether X refers to metal, ice, or any other substance. This structuring tool is known as a hypothetical function of understanding, a template that guides the mind in connecting various notions in a cause and effect relationship. Similarly, another pattern, X is either Y or Z, known as a disjunctive function, helps the mind grasp mutual exclusivity and choice between options. Now let's advance to the faculty of reason, which extends these functions into more complex logical constructs, the syllogisms. Consider the reasoning sequence. An animal is either alive or dead. This animal is not alive, therefore it is dead. Here we see a clear application of logical principles, forming a reasoning template. X is either Y or Z. X is not Y, therefore X is Z. These logical functions and principles of reasoning, hypothetical and disjunctive functions, and their expansion into syllogistic reasoning, act as cognitive blueprints. They guide the mind in assembling thoughts into coherent arguments and conclusions. Such inherent logical frameworks are essential for any cognitive activity. Without these inbuilt templates, the mind would be at a loss about how to start connecting concepts, creating a paradox where the very act of thinking would require precedents of thought structures that had not yet been established. By recognizing these templates as essential mental faculties, we acknowledge that our capability to think, reason, and understand is not something that we develop from scratch or solely through external experiences. Instead, these are part of the mind's innate arsenal, enabling us to navigate and make sense of the world from the outset. This foundational aspect of cognitive psychology highlights the pre-equipped nature of human thought, essential for both everyday decision-making and advanced philosophical reasoning. Part 11. Unlocking a priori knowledge through the mind's innate framework. As we probe deeper into the mysteries of cognition, we've explored how foundational elements like space, time, logical functions, and principles of reasoning shape our thoughts and perceptions. These elements serve as mental templates, aiding in the formulation of a priori knowledge, knowledge that exists independently of sensory experience. We are now poised to address the intriguing question: how do we acquire such a priori knowledge? The pivotal insight is, the mind's innate templates enable the acquisition of a priori knowledge and concepts, creating a framework for understanding without reliance on sensory experience. Consider the domains of space and time. Through meticulous introspection into these dimensions, fundamental truths about geometry and mathematics emerge. Take, for instance, the concept of a circle, a continuous curve equidistant from a center point, existing purely within the spatial framework. This geometric truth, like many others, does not necessitate empirical evidence, but stems from the mind's inherent spatial understanding. Thus, a priori knowledge in mathematics is accessible through contemplation of these internalized forms of space, which are embedded in the mind prior to any empirical interaction. Shifting our focus to the faculty of understanding, let's revisit the hypothetical logical function, if x, then y. This logical framework underpins the concept of causality, a central metaphysical notion that if one event occurs, it necessitates the occurrence of another. Such logical functions enable the mind to distill many core metaphysical concepts, referred to as the categories of understanding. These categories, 12 in total, resonate with the 12 logical functions and encompass essential concepts like causality, unity, plurality, existence, and possibility. The formation of these categories illustrates the mind's ability to turn inward, scrutinizing its own operational processes. Each category reflects a distinct manner in which we form judgments and make sense of the world, providing templates for connecting and synthesizing our thoughts. Conclusively, these categories of understanding are not derived from external experiences, but are inherent to the cognitive architecture of the mind. They epitomize pure a priori concepts that the mind can access through introspective examination of its intrinsic logical capacities. In essence, the mind's ability to generate a priori knowledge illustrates the profound internal mechanisms by which we comprehend and engage with the world. This process highlights not just a passive reception of the world, but an active, inward engagement with the fundamental structures of thought and perception. Part 12. The limitations of our cognitive framework in grasping reality. As we further explore the intricacies of the mind's cognitive abilities, an important realization dawns. The categories of understanding, foundational as they are to our perception, do not necessarily capture reality as it truly is, but rather our experience of it. The central insight to consider is the categories of understanding shape our conscious experience, but may not directly correspond to the actual structure of reality. To understand this, let's consider how we perceive and interpret everyday scenarios. When witnessing a bowling ball pressing down into a pillow, for instance, our mind instinctively uses the category of causality to interpret this observation. The weight of the bowling ball causes the depression in the pillow. This interpretation isn't just an observation, it's a cognitive construction, where the mind applies its inherent structures to make sense of what it perceives. This use of the category of causality illuminates how our minds are programmed to assemble sensory data into coherent experiences. We don't merely see unrelated phenomena, we see causative, interconnected events. This isn't because the world explicitly presents itself this way, but because our minds impose this order to navigate and make sense of our surroundings. Here lies a profound implication. While these categories enable us to construct a coherent view of the world, they reflect more about how we process experiences than about the truth of external reality. Our perception of causality, among other categorizations, feels like a universal law, not because it inherently exists in the world, but because our cognitive framework can't operate without it. It's a law of our mind's functioning, essential for converting the chaotic influx of sensory inputs into a stable, understandable reality. Thus, causality, unity, plurality, and other categories fundamentally shape our experiences and are indispensable for our interaction with the world. However, they may not necessarily reveal the true nature of reality itself, what philosophers sometimes refer to as the thing in itself. This aspect of reality, independent of our perceptions and cognitive structures, remains enigmatic and elusive. Because the mind automatically and unavoidably uses these categories to process all sensory information, our experiences are inherently colored by them. Consequently, While we can assert with confidence that our experienced reality conforms to these categorical laws, we remain uncertain about whether these laws hold true for reality in its unfiltered form. In essence, while our cognitive faculties are remarkably adept at constructing a navigable reality, they also set the boundaries for our understanding, hinting at a profound, perhaps unreachable depth of reality that transcends our perceptual capacities. Part 13. The elusive nature of reality beyond human perception. As we delve deeper into the philosophical exploration of knowledge and perception, we confront a groundbreaking and challenging conclusion about the limits of human understanding. The transformative insight at hand is we cannot apprehensively discern anything about reality in itself, not even basic attributes like its existence in space and time. This idea emerges from a critical examination of how we perceive space and time themselves. Consider space as it is commonly understood, with dimensions of width, height, and depth. Now, imagine if the intrinsic structure of your mind perceived space differently, perhaps in 2, 5, or 10 dimensions, or maybe didn't perceive spatial dimensions at all. Your experience of the world would align with these perceptions, irrespective of how space exists in external reality. This thought experiment highlights a crucial point. Even if reality externally embodies three-dimensional space, our minds need to have a three-dimensional framework in place to process and perceive it as such. If our cognitive framework were different, our perception of dimensions would be altered. Thus, our experience of space is mediated by the mental structures we possess prior to any sensory experience. The same reasoning applies to time. If we sought to verify that time and space are intrinsic properties of external reality, we would naturally turn to our sensory experiences, as they are our direct link to the outside world. But here's the critical twist. By the time we become consciously aware of these sensations, they have already been processed through our mental frameworks of time and space, as well as through various categories of understanding like causality. Consequently, the evidence we observe is inherently influenced by the very structures through which we perceive it. We see time, space, causality, and other elements because we are predisposed to organize our experiences using these categories. To assume that these features exist independently in external reality, based on our perceptions, would be analogous to someone wearing blue-tinted glasses, concluding that the entire world is inherently blue. In essence, our perceptions are not neutral or objective windows to reality. They are interpretations shaped by the cognitive and perceptual frameworks built into our minds. This leads us to a philosophical juncture where we must acknowledge a fundamental barrier. While we can ascertain how reality appears to us, verifying how it exists independently of our perceptions remains an insurmountable challenge. This profound revelation urges us to reconsider the extent and the limits of what we can truly know, admitting humbly that the nature of reality in itself might forever elude our complete understanding. Part 14. The Boundaries of Reason in Understanding the True Nature of Reality. As we delve deeper into the capabilities and limitations of human cognition, we encounter a pivotal stance in philosophical thought, particularly within the framework laid out by Kant. This brings us to a critical juncture in our exploration of knowledge and perception. The essential insight here is, reason should refrain from venturing into metaphysical speculation about the nature of reality in itself, known as noumena. This cautious approach stems from a fundamental understanding. While concepts like time, space, and causality are integral to organizing our sensory experiences, it remains uncertain whether these categories reflect the true nature of external reality. They could either faithfully mirror the structure of the external world, or merely represent the cognitive scaffolding through which we interpret all sensory data. Given this uncertainty, where every perception is inevitably colored by our mental frameworks of time, space, and causality, we reach a sobering conclusion. We cannot definitively know if these elements exist as such within the realm of external reality or if they are constructs of our perception. The ramifications of this understanding are profound, particularly in the realm of metaphysics. While the truths of geometry, the laws of motion, and the principle of causality provide substantial insights into the nature of the world as we experience it, the phenomenal world, they cannot assuredly be extended to describe the noumenal world, the reality in itself that lies beyond our cognitive reach. As such, reason, when applied to metaphysical inquiry beyond the experiential realm, encounters its limits. It can offer conjectures and hypotheses about the nature of noumena, but these remain speculative and untestable through empirical or sensory means. To assert knowledge about the noumenal realm would surpass the inherent capabilities of our cognitive faculties, which are inherently designed to process and understand only the phenomena, the reality as it appears to us through our sensory and cognitive filters. Therefore, while reason is an invaluable tool in navigating and making sense of the phenomenal world, it must acknowledge its boundary when it comes to the noumenal world. Attempting to apply its principles beyond this boundary delves into speculative metaphysics, which, while intellectually stimulating, does not yield concrete, verifiable knowledge about the true essence of reality. In conclusion, this perspective urges a humbling recognition of the limits of human reason and a cautious approach towards claims of knowledge about the ultimate nature of reality, a realm potentially forever beyond the grasp of our cognitive faculties. Final summary. The journey through the capabilities and constraints of human cognition reveals a profound truth. The mind is not merely a passive recipient of external stimuli, but an active participant in constructing reality as we perceive it. By employing intrinsic templates and frameworks, such as space, time, and causal relationships, the mind organizes sensory data into a coherent, understandable experience. A pivotal realization from this exploration is that these cognitive structures, while enabling us to navigate and make sense of our world, may not necessarily correspond to reality as it exists independently of human perception. This inherent limitation implies that the real nature of things outside our perception might differ drastically from how we experience and understand them. This philosophical standpoint acknowledges a potential disconnect between our mental constructs and the true essence of reality. Given this scenario, engaging in metaphysical speculation about the nature of reality, what Kant refers to as the realm of noumena, shifts into the territory of pure conjecture. Without empirical access or concrete methods to verify the independent structures of reality, such speculation remains ungrounded and inherently speculative. Consequently, it becomes prudent to focus our rational endeavors on what can be empirically observed and scientifically evaluated, the phenomenal world. Here, the laws of physics, principles of mathematics, and empirical sciences provide a robust framework for understanding and interacting with the world as we perceive it. On the other hand, the metaphysical, attempting to decipher the ultimate nature of reality, might better be explored through philosophical debate or considered within the domain of religious belief, where faith rather than empirical evidence guides understanding. In summary, while our minds equip us with remarkable tools to perceive and analyze the phenomenal world, they also impose boundaries on our ability to outright understand reality as it is. Recognizing and respecting these limitations ensures a more grounded approach to knowledge, where science addresses what can be observed and measured, and metaphysics remains a realm of intellectual exploration rather than empirical certainty. Thank you for joining me today on this journey of learning and discovery as we explored the insights of another thought-provoking book in our growing library of knowledge. If you've enjoyed our time together, please take a moment to follow our podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and share 20-minute books with other knowledge seekers. Your support truly means a lot. Don't forget to join me again in the next episode, where we will delve into another enriching book. Until then, happy reading and happy listening.